morning, everyone. It's Graham Healy from the Healy Report. As this election gets very close, it's a week and a half away now. I think we're on the 23rd. According to my little diary here, what have we got now? 23rd, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days to go to the federal election. And I just want to bring something up. Last night, the People First Party Senate candidate for Western Australia, Madison King, sent through a video which is very interesting, actually. It's a video about, what's his name, Eric Butler, 1989. 1989, would you believe? And he's talking basically about globalism. Unfortunately, Eric Butler had I looked up Eric Butler. What he said in the video was spot on, by the way. Absolutely spot on. But unfortunately, Eric Butler was anti-Semitic. That was a downside, Eric Butler. But he certainly had the picture of what was happening regarding globalism absolutely spot on. But a far more accurate, from what I see anyhow, and I've got two of the books, far more accurate and not anti-Semitic anyhow, but far more accurate author. You might be able to see this, I don't know, it might be backwards, probably is backwards. Anyway, this is the book, and you just got to imagine that. I've put up the picture on the right way, but going on mobiles it turns backwards. So it's called Globalization, The Demise of the Australian Nation by Graham L. Strawn, a Bachelor of Science, and he was a lawyer as well. And he was a local bloke from Brisbane. I think he's passed away now. But I remember doing a series of videos on this. I've still got it on one of my websites. I've got about 10 websites, but one of it that was covering global finances called, would you believe, Healy's No More BS.com. I think it's still up in cyberspace. A bit of historical stuff on there with Jim Rickards and, not so much Jim Rickards, but I've covered a bit of politics over the time. And the other book that Graham L. Strawn did was The 22 Steps to Global Tyranny. Now, these are all written, same with that guy, Eric Butler, they were all written in 1989, 1990. Strawn wrote this book in 1998. So that's about the time that Senator Gerard Rennick is quoting all these changes in the Australian economy, all the principles of the Australian economy and how they circumnavigated the Constitution and all this sort of stuff with Gough Whitlam and even Bob Hawke, even though I was a Bob Hawke fan myself back in the day as a union rep, but in the airlines, that is, wasn't too hard line, but, clerks union, at least had a bit of grace there. But the thing is that what these authors said, and especially Graham Strawn, I'll read you a little bit of this when he talks about free trade. Now, you can see I highlight stuff. So when I don't read any fiction books. I just read, factual stuff about what's happening in the world today, such as, and I'll get this one in while I'm at it, you really want to know the full story on Anthony Fauci, right? You get that book there, The Real Anthony Fauci by Robert F. Kennedy. Now, that tells you in referenced terms, legally referenced terms, because Robert F. Kennedy is a lawyer as well, quite a good one too, and from a very famous family. And it's quite ironic now that he is overseeing CDC and FDA and all the rest of them. They're just totally corrupt organisations, just as they are in Australia, as Senator Rennick has said, and we all from the people who realised the 2020 scamdemic, that in fact, I've just lost my train of thought then, but anyway, I'll catch it in a second. Getting back to this free trade agreement. See, where we are in time and space is, you see what Donald Trump's doing now, and I'm a Trump fan. I'm not a Trump fan because of, oh, I don't like his personality or something. Well, actually, I do like his personality. He's a leader and he's a decision maker and he's actually getting the job done. And with Donald Trump, he's done nothing different to what he's been saying for 40 years. You can go back in the internet, listen to some of his early interviews, and he said the whole way along that America's been ripped off by the politicians. Now, there's a little bit of a common denominator in, now I'm 70 this year, right? So I've been around for a while, and I've been in business, I've been employed, I've done the full kaleidoscope of occupations. Plus, I've got a medical science degree as well. So, you know, I've seen what academia's like. I've seen how far left they are, and how they just, you know, believe a lot of BS. But anyway, you know, they want to come down in the real world. I won't go down that line, but the main theme is, where are we now in time and space? Now, all kudos to Madison King, who's the People First Senate candidate in Western Australia. If you're in Western Australia, vote 1 Madison King. If you're in Queensland, vote 1 Senator Gerard Rennick. And of course, my other preference vote goes to Dr. William Bay, who beat APRA, the only doctor who was deregistered for 2 years, fighting up against Big Pharma and all the rest of it. Is the only one who beat APRA in the Supreme Court in Brisbane. I was there, and I tell you what, one man against 10 lawyers. That's what it boils down to. He is one hell of a... He makes a lot of statements, and people were knocking him like they do with everyone else. You had all these idiots on the internet, you know, I don't know what they call them, but yeah, BS crazy or something like that. So they were criticising Bay, criticised him for 2 years, lost his wife, his car, his house, went through the lot. The APRA and them tried to destroy you, right? But, as he always says, we will win and we'll be victorious. So he won that case on the 13th of December 2024, just a few months ago. And his life's coming back together, praise the Lord, amen. Beautiful fiancé, and you know, that's all happening as well. So get back to the globalism picture, very important, very important. See, Trump is dismantling the globalism. Now people, you know, so what is globalism? Well, globalism, to cut a long story short, and I'll go into it in a little bit of detail without getting boring, globalism is the destruction of sovereignty. In other words, Australia, and about the, I think it's Gerard Rennick, and I'll just mention this again as I do in all my videos, Senator Gerard Rennick has got the blueprint for the economic recovery of Australia. You want to know more about it, just go onto his website. It's all there in black and white. Read through it, read through the tax policies, all this. Nothing confusing. Straightforward. Even I can understand it. And I'm a person, it's got to be practical. You've got to show the bottom line. If I can understand it, anyone can understand it. That's what I say, you know. Not that I'm stupid or anything, but I'm just saying, you've got to make it understandable for the average person. Now, Rennick's got the blueprint to reverse the globalism in this country. Now, what is globalism? Well, what it really is what in the Whitlam era, Bob Hawke, Whitlam era, Paul Keating, and the Liberals as well, by the way. The Liberals, you know, the conservative side of the, and these days, they used to be really conservative, you know, with, you know, back in that day, the Conservatives were Conservatives, but they were selling out the country anyhow. So, you know, they just did it a different way. They did it through the housing boom and all the rest of it, and these days it's 16 times more the average yearly wage to buy a house. It's just impossible for anyone to buy a house. I could go down that line, but with the housing situation, it's a bit like this. the current governments, both Liberal and Labor, what they're doing is, especially Labor, you don't want to be voting for Labor or Greens, of course, but Dutton's not much better, unfortunately. So you've got to vote for the independents, and in our case in Queensland, number 1, Gerard Rennick, and I say number 2, Dr. William Bay, and then 3, 4, 5, and 6 above the line for the Senate. Just vote for the independent parties. And I know a couple of them have been sort of selling out a bit, but you don't want to be voting for the majors if you want change to happen in this country. And what I'm predicting, and I'll state it on the 23rd of April 2025, that Senator Gerard Rennick will form an alternative party which will form government in a not too near future, because the 3rd of May, that's going to be hung. It'll be a hung parliament. Dutton's not doing enough to do anything, and he's got a whole lot of negative forces in the Liberal Party fighting against him anyhow, right? So, forget about, we'll give Labor a go, and now we're going to give Liberals a go. That era is finished. We need a completely new sweep through the government, change the bureaucracy totally, and that's not going to happen with either Dutton, and certainly not going to happen with the communist Labor pro-China government. So what I'm getting back to is globalism, right? Globalism. Here it is here. I don't know whether this book's available anymore, but certainly I've got it. Globalism, the demise of the Australian nation. Now, people talk about free trade. You have a look at these. Basically, they're complete idiots, actually. They don't understand what free trade is. Free trade is this. If I'm trading with a business, that he has no unfair advantage. Now, I've run several businesses. I'll give you an example. Local in Australia, I'll give you the examples of globalism in Australia. One, I had a milk run for a little while as well. So, I had a lot of different things, big gyms, all this sort of stuff. News agencies. We owned a small bank at one point, post office, all that. So this is like it is. So the news agencies, one of my business partner had, I sold out, I had shares, business shares of partnership in a couple of news agencies, and we had a mini market and whatever, bank and a post office. So I sold out my share, and that partner of mine, who used to be one of my supervisors when I was in the airlines, they went on for another 20 or 30 years. But what happened was rationalisation came in. Now, what's rationalisation? Well, rationalisation is simply another little sneaky term that the so-called government uses that we're going to wipe out small business. So news agencies had like if you bought a news agency, it cost you a fair bit of money, but you had the exclusive right to sell, the glossy magazines and newspapers and what have you. Suddenly, the supermarkets were selling the same thing. So the little news agency, the mum and dad business next door to the shopping centre, now had to compete against Coles and Woolworths. That's globalism for you. See, it's the big guys swallowing up the little guys, even though 98% of all people employed in this country are employed by small to medium business, the coffee shops, the tradies, all this sort of stuff. The plumbers and maybe a small legal firm or whatever, what have you. But increasingly over the years, Australia's become expanded the globalism picture. Now, here's another example with the milk runs, right? I remember I had a milk run back in North Queensland with Bob Country. I know Bob, and I knew his father before he passed away. The average milk run was about 100 grand. That's back in 1995, 1990, 95, around about where these books are written. And suddenly, there was land of milk was locally owned by farmers up on the Atherton tableland, and then suddenly they were rationalising. The word rationalisation was coming out, where they were selling off the local industry to the big multinationals. That's what they call rationalisation. Another word for rationalisation is screwing over the small business owners. So the people who had like milk runs like I had, I got out quick because I knew what was going on. A lot of people aren't aware, you know, it's like they find out when it's too late. And I remember being at my milk run saying to the guys, you better get out now, they're going to rationalise this show, and they thought I was mad. So at the end of the day, that happened. When I sold my run, it happened within about 6 months. Guys who had runs with a couple of 100,000. Now you can imagine, this is going back in the 90s, your run was worth a couple of 100,000, your whole family business was centred on that. Suddenly, the company rebuys it for 10 grand. See you later. Without any compensation, nothing. You'd be in the street with nothing. That's rationalisation. It's eroding small business. Another example. Which one was I thinking of? There's the milk runs. There's the news agencies. The taxis. That's a good one. Yeah, Palachuk did this one. So here we go. We've got private business owners. I mean, just recently, this is like a couple of weeks ago, I had to go to the Royal Brisbane. You know, I sustained a bit of an injury, but I had to go to the Royal Brisbane. And of course, I love talking to taxi drivers. So, you know, and the taxi drivers these days are usually either Sikh Indians or, you know, I rarely see an Aussie taxi driver anymore, but these guys are still got to pay really large amounts to own a taxi, $500,000, something like that, 250,000, $500,000. So Palachuk allows Uber, international global company, to come into Brisbane and totally undermine the established local business of, you know, black and white and yellow cabs and all that. Just undermine the business. The guys who paid 250,000 for their cabs are suddenly being undermined by Joe Bloggs, who's driving the family vehicle around with a you know, printed little Uber sign on the back of it. You see how it works? It's all about undermining your sovereignty, undermining the local business, and selling it off to global businesses. Guess what? They don't pay tax in this country. Now, if you want to know all about that, the globalization is about, it's basically putting a parasite, a global parasite with tentacles from overseas into the country and sucking the guts out of it. That's the best way I could put it. That's the picture. It's like having an octopus tentacles, you know, a blue ring octopus sucking out the guts out of the country with no return. That's globalism.